Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Hi, Sam. Good morning. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneur Show. Thank you so much for taking time out for this.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Sam, I did a little bit of reading on the internet about you. The funny thing was, I just couldn't open your LinkedIn profile. I tried a lot. I could see Sam Bellows, CEO at Franklin
Yeah.
Yard. I tried
Yeah.
from two other profiles, but somehow it didn't work. But I read a little bit about you on the website. And I thought, anyway, I'm going to find out a lot more about you on the podcast. So here's my first question. How did you get into teaching? Was that your plan all along growing up? Or how did it happen? What's the story?
Yeah, no, it wasn't really the plan. So I went to college, and then after that I went to grad school for political theory. It's like basically philosophy. And I was in a PhD program at the University of Texas. And I left. I realized I didn't want to be a professor. I think it was just, you have to write a dissertation until you're 30. It's really hard. I mean, I admire it, and there was a lot of things I loved about it, but it's a super hard path. So I left, wasn't really sure what I was going to do, and then figured, well, let me try tutoring, and then really liked it. And then years of tutoring followed, and then I thought, with a couple partners, like, why don't we try to start a tutoring company? And that was, I think, almost 5 years ago now. So we've been around since 2019.
Wow. Okay. Franklin Yard is 5 years old.
Yes.
And you were tutoring for a few years even before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I've been tutoring for almost 10 years.
Wow. And you didn't want to become a professor because of the process that you had to go through? Is that the reason?
Well,
because what's the difference really, being a professor and, teaching? Isn't it all the same?
Yeah. In the U.S., well, it depends on what you're teaching. So in the U.S., to be a political philosophy professor, I mean, so that means 6 years of grad school, and then you might get a job for a year, and then you have to get another job for another year. And to get like a real full, called like a tenure track job, it can take years, and it can also not happen at all. So it is teaching. It's teaching, but just like the sort of professional side of it is very, very difficult depending on your field. So yeah, but and then, funny enough, I just still ended up teaching basically. So.
Got it. Cool. So, Sam, when you decided that, you're not going to pursue your doctorate program anymore and you switched to tutoring, what was your thought process at that point? Was it a temporary thing you took up while you searched for something else? Or how did that pan out? And what was the moment you thought, okay, you know what, tutoring, test prep tutoring is what I'm going to be doing full time?
Well, okay, I thought it was going to be temporary. But it wasn't, I don't know, it probably took like 2 months before I realized I really, really, really liked it and was good at it. And it kind of gave me a little bit of purpose, I guess. Because I just didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I didn't know what kind of job I wanted. And this was just like a very different sort of thing from a regular job. In some ways great, in some ways not great. But, you can just basically talk about math all day, with some people. And it's like, it's an unusual thing and kind of cool. So I liked it.
Got it, Sam. And it really comes out that you're passionate about you found your passion, or you really liked it in those 2 months, and you said you really liked it. So what about it? Is it some people like the fact that they can influence teenagers or a transitional phase in people's lives, and or they can probably help them cross that obstacle of test prep and all that. And for some people it's about the subject itself. They love math, for example, and they just don't get bored of it ever. So what's the actual thing for you? Is it the fact that you have access? Because some people, when they start off teaching, they outsource the teaching part and then they run the business. So it's different. The agenda is different. So what is it for you? I mean, do you still teach, being the CEO of Franklin Yard? And how do you, I see that you are the head tutor even now on the website, so how do you manage everything being a CEO, and what was it that really made you stick to the job?
Yeah. So, okay. I think the reason that I really liked it in the beginning was a few things. I liked working with teenagers, I think, because they were, kind of like the way that you put it, is sort of this pivotal moment in their life, and there's just something so refreshing about, they're sort of like more natural at that age. Like they're not, like the world hasn't like beaten them down.
Yeah.
and, and so they're so interesting. And they also come in so many different varieties that each one is like so fascinating. So I think that was really cool. And then the challenge of the test itself, and sort of like the puzzle of the tests, I should say, was also appealing, because it was like this formidable opponent that I thought, it would be so cool if I could figure out how to help everyone beat this thing, because it's like, it's not easy, right? So like that's a tough, fun project, and it was some combination of those things that I think really got me into it. And I do still teach. It is pretty hard at this point to like, I mean, I don't know. I love teaching. I don't know how long I'll keep tutoring for it. It's there is there's a lot to balance. There's a lot to juggle, but for now, at least being a part of, definitely tutoring now, but I think always sort of having some foot in the curriculum and the sort of tutor development and stuff like that. I love that.
Got it. And the fact that you did your PhD, obviously, you have it in your head that you're going to teach at some point, but obviously, temporarily you got back into tutoring. I'm sure it's different talking to a bunch of almost adults as compared to teenagers, who are just getting into that. So, were you a natural when you started teaching, or, you had to kind of, train yourself, prepare yourself for teaching, to get into your own style? How did that pan out?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it came pretty naturally, although I think teaching one-on-one, which is most of what we do, is a very different thing than teaching a classroom. Classroom teaching, which I've done some of, is, I think, harder and doesn't come as naturally to me. It took longer to get good at that, and I don't even know if I'm still not as good as, like, I'm fine at classroom teaching, but one-on-one is like really my sweet spot. Yeah, that was, I think, pretty easy for me from the beginning.
And talking about, classroom teaching and one-on-one, classroom teaching, you can be yourself because there are so many people, you can't really personalize or customize your services to match everybody else. And then, you be yourself, and some students relate to you and some don't. But when it comes to one-on-one,
Yeah.
when it comes to one-on-one, you have to, right? I mean, otherwise there's no point continuing during the second class or whatever it is. So one-on-one, I've spoken to some companies that kind of, do this student to teacher matching based on some information that they have. How is it for you at Franklin Yard? And for you personally, do you have a certain pattern in the students that you get? Or have you figured out a way to kind of, quickly see what kind of a student is this and change your approach?
Okay. So the tutor matching is interesting, and I think what we've tried to do is get tutors that have the sort of a lot of different types of tutors. um, ages, personalities, all of that. And that's really always a big part of the conversation early on with parents is like, what kind of teacher does your kid click
Oh,
with?
okay.
You know?
Right.
So, and I think for the most part, we usually have somebody that fits that description. So that's how that works. I mean, as for me, as far as my students, a lot of them are sort of friends of past people I've worked with. So that kind of determines a lot of who I end up working with. But as far as, I don't know, I think I'm sort of versatile with students. I definitely you definitely have to mix it up, right? Like you can't be the same
Yeah, yeah,
person for everyone at all. Like not even close, not even remotely.
yeah. And you also mentioned earlier that, it's the variety of students that also kind of, throws a challenge and stuff like that. Got it. And Sam, now, Franklin Yard is about 5 years old. You've been teaching for 10 years. So how did Franklin Yard happen?
Well, I had a friend. I have a friend who was a tutor that started tutoring with me. His name is Josh. Um, he's the COO
He's the
of Franklin
CEO,
Yard.
right? I saw.
Yeah, and so he was my sort of tutor soulmate, so to speak. And we started at the same time, and we just really kind of got into it together. And I think we sort of fed off of each other. And then Tara, who was our we started with three people. It was the sort of founding trio, and Tara was on the sort of parent relationship side of test prep. So she had been in education for a while in a number of different roles, worked at private schools, worked in test prep. And so we had all gotten close and kind of came to this decision together after a while. It's like, hey, let's try to do this.
Got it, Sam. Sam, now, working as a tutor, either for another organization or a freelancer is one thing, but then, kind of having a company like Franklin Yard and then running that kind of an organized tutoring company is a different ball game in terms of finding students. There are so many other elements that come attached with another company, right? So, did you get some exposure before Franklin Yard as to, let's say acquiring students, for example, or, um, marketing, or, did you have to learn, or when you started Franklin Yard, do you have any preparation, or it was on the job sort of a learning?
Yeah, I was clueless. I didn't know anything.
Okay.
I don't think any of us. I mean, Tara was probably the most savvy with talking to parents, I guess. But yeah, we sort of just had to learn as we went along, which can be a bumpy road, but we're still figuring it out. I don't know.
Got
I
it.
still have a lot to learn.
Got it. And you have your titles very clear: CEO, COO, and Tara is the founder, and I forgot another thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, are they very nicely followed, or is it all jumbled still? The roles.
That's such a good question. It's certainly more. It's certainly more followed than it was in the beginning, right? At the beginning, it's just all hands on deck. I think you probably know what this is like, where
Right.
it's just like, yeah, it's more aspirational, right? Like we're like, well, once we're bigger, these will be our roles. So I think we're getting there. Certainly way more than we were in the beginning, where it was just like a free for all.
Got it. And the three of you, I'm asking this for the listeners who are probably wondering. One is entrepreneurship. Another thing is they say, what, you find somebody to work with. You find a co-founder, because it's going to be very lonely otherwise. So, but then there are so many other problems there. You got to find the right people, otherwise it's a make or break situation. So, what kind of a team are you? What's the dynamics like? Are you like, hey, you know what, you be the CEO, I'll take the easier stuff? or no, I'm going to be the CEO, you be the other thing. So how are you guys?
Well, I think 3 people is an interesting number. I think the experience of trying to get something off the ground with 3 equal partners rather than 2 or 1. I mean, 1 is obviously like a whole different thing. 1 is very different than 2, and 2 is very different than 3. And I think the blessing of 3 is it's I mean, 1 is like a dictatorship, right? You're the
Yeah,
king who rules the country, and that's great in some ways. You can do whatever you want, you can move as fast as you want, but you can also make really bad decisions, and there's nobody to check you. When there's 3, it's like things move slowly. It moves on. You have to agree on things, but you're much less likely to make really bad decisions. And so I think that that's been helpful. And yeah, you have to get along, and you have to, I think, have respect for each other too, and respect for each other's opinions.
right. I mean, I don't think there is a black and white method to kind of, you at some point it's leap of faith. So
Yeah.
yeah. And another thing that I wanted to ask you was, being a CEO, you have to make a ton of decisions, so many decisions, like, so how do you deal? I mean, do you ever have decision fatigue, or how do you handle that? Because you can't say no. I mean, I don't want to make a decision here, but you have to sometimes take a decision within an hour or a couple of hours. Are you always sincere when you're making a decision, or do you have any framework that you follow, a guiding principle as such?
Yeah. Well, I do think it's interesting to, like, coming from a sort of philosophy background. You think very slowly, right? you don't you don't make decisions quickly at all, and you sort of ponder it, and because what matters is getting at the truth of it, and that's really the only thing that matters. And so being in a situation where you now have to make decisions fast, and it's like you have to make decisions that you're not always going to be right, but you have to make them anyway, because
Yeah.
no decision isn't an option. I don't think we really follow a framework, to be honest, but we've probably gotten more. We've probably got a little bit better just because we're more organized. So I think keeping track of the evolution of your thoughts, notes, like literally just notes, like not, keeping track of like what you've thought about in the past, rather than just kind of redoing the same decision over and over. I mean, that's maybe a low bar. I know there's people who do this stuff like extremely well, and I know there's techniques for this stuff that is, like the consultants of the world have, like, their amazing ways of doing this. And yeah, I should have been a consultant before. Clearly, it's always preparation, but I don't have that preparation. So I think we're getting better.
Got it, Sam. Sam, when it comes to, you've got a lot of tutors working with you, so you have a commitment to have a certain number of students come in at certain points in time. Has it? I mean, how easy or difficult is it to get students, and what's your marketing methods like? How aggressive or non-aggressive you are?
Yeah. So our students primarily come from word of mouth and referrals. One, relationships with schools, mostly private schools in the U.S., and then relationships with private educational consultants who work with students to help them apply to college and make smart decisions about that. So it's really been like just relationships. So like those 3 types of relationships: parent relationships, school relationships, educational consultant relationships. That's just been how we've grown. We don't really do any marketing aside from that. I'm sure we will in the future, but I mean, it's worked. It's worked well enough so far.
Got it, Sam. Pretty traditional approach, I'd say so far, and
Yeah.
you haven't gone the social media route, the ads, and all that so far. Great.
That's
Um,
right.
Sam, you said you started Franklin Yard in 2019. It was pre-pandemic, and were you one-on-one online even then, or did you have to change only when the pandemic hit? If you did, what was the transition like?
Yeah, it was sort of late 2019, and we were just getting off the ground. So we were a baby company, sort of
Right,
like, we were technically a company, but like not really a company. And
right. Were you in person then? Like even your
yeah,
teaching before that 5 years?
yeah,
Uh, okay, got it.
yeah. And it's actually, I look back on this and I think, why did I think that that was even a good idea for a company if you have to go in person? Because it's so hard to. It's like, I think in some ways it was a very bad business idea, um, that got bailed out by this sort of discovery that online tutoring can be just as effective. And so we had done tutoring online, like a good amount of it before, but I think people weren't as accepting of it at the time. So most of what we did was, like, parents weren't as accepting of it. So most of what we did was still in person prior to the pandemic. So the transition itself wasn't actually that hard for us, but
Right.
what was hard was that all the tests were getting canceled at the time. So then nobody nobody wanted to prep for months, and so we didn't. There was no demand. So that was the hardest part for the pandemic. It wasn't online learning.
Okay. And I mean, did it make any difference between teaching in person and teaching online for you in terms of engaging with the student? Of course, it's different for group classes, and you focus on one-on-one. So, was there any difficulty at all with the tools and uh, connecting with the student online?
I think there's pros and cons that kind of balance each other out or even out. Like, I think that there are definitely advantages to teaching in person, but there's also advantages to the ability to share your screen and just kind of have like your thought process in front of both of you. As it's like you see the work, you see how the problem unfolds. All of that stuff is made so much more dynamic, I think, in um, if you're using the right tools in an online context. So I think it's a different experience, but I think they're both pretty much equally effective.
And talking about tools, how many and what are the tools that you use to kind of have a wholesome online tutoring experience? Has it been the same, the tools that you started using in 2020? This is the same you're using even today?
Yeah, and maybe it's not even the tools that are so special. It's just getting good at using them. So it's, first of all, it's transitioning all of your materials to be digital. So you can annotate and screen share everything.
Right.
Um, I mean, that was an absolutely necessary step. Um, I think some tutors are different. I think some tutors have some of our tutors have iPads that they use as like a secondary tool to do that. That's sort of personal preference, but yeah, it's just like getting good at it. I think is the biggest part, using those tools.
Got it, Sam. Sam, just another question about Franklin Yard. When you started, the three of you, did you need any capital to start, or was it just the human effort and the time? Was that the capital? How
It
how
was
did it?
just, yeah, it was just that. It was just that. Um, because we went to people's houses, so we didn't need an office. And I mean, we just needed computers and some books, but books aren't very expensive. So really, it was a very light um, it was capital light, which was really one of the great things about getting it off the ground and the ability to get it off the ground.
Got it. And Sam, when you say, there was no capital needed, it was just continuing what you probably did when you did not have a company. Just for our listeners to get a perspective of what it is to be a freelancer and teaching, same stuff that you do, but you're doing it as a freelancer. And you might be CEO, whatever it is, you still teach and you do the basic stuff. What is really the difference between being a freelancer, one-on-one tutor, or working for another organization versus having a company with 3 people in the leadership group?
So tutoring on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the outset, the reason I'm asking is at the outset, to me, it doesn't seem very different. You know what? Oh, before you were teaching on your own, even now, the actual job that you do is one-on-one tutoring. And the 2 other people are still doing things on their own. So where is the difference in terms of, it could be from a mental makeup or whatever it is. If you can just elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah. So in the beginning, there really is no difference. It's really the same. I think the difference at the end of the day is just how many students, kind of depends on how many students you want to have. So I think, by the way, being a freelance tutor can be an awesome job. It's just hard. I think the thing that's hard about it is if you want to make it your full-time income, which meaning like a lot of students and consistent students, then you have to start really thinking about how do you make that happen? And then you're sort of, now we're almost getting into the business territory. So if you don't mind just having kind of word of mouth and like a nice amount of students, I think freelance tutoring is really great. But I think the difference for us over time was just we need to be intentional about the marketing and the relationship building side of things. The tutoring itself hadn't really changed.
Got it, Sam. Sam, I'm just going to dig a little bit, dig a little deeper into the 3 channels or 3 relationships that you spoke about. One is the parent relationship. One more is the network with the schools that you have. Another is the counselors, right? Okay. But does it come from each other's past network, or do you initiate new relationships? If it comes from past network, that's fine. But if you initiate new relationships, what's your method? What's your process? Do you write an email? Do you just walk into a school? How do you do that?
Yeah. So we had one school that we had a connection with from a past relationship. And then we just kind of translated that into, we sort of used that to convert more schools. But it was really just like one school. Is what do they say? Land and expand. It wasn't really that, but it was like, we just had to take this one relationship, really do a good job with it, and then hope that we could turn that into more. And we did. And I think some of it's just like introducing yourself. Hey, we work with such and such school. Here's what we do. Do you want to have a conversation? And then the parent relationships also had to be basically new. And it's kind of the same deal. Like you just have to start somewhere. And then in that case, you just have to do a good job and just get them to tell other folks that you did a good job. And then if you nail it, then it kind of is exponential.
Right. And when it comes to the independent, counselors, college counselors, or admission counselors, do you attend any events where you meet these people, or and how does it work? I mean, does it work both ways? Do you help independent counselors get students, or are you planning to start those services as well?
So some of those folks we don't really go to events, but some of those folks I connected with on LinkedIn, for instance, or
Okay.
actually just had a couple that like I ran into in life, which was just sort of good luck, good fortune.
Right.
We don't send that many students to independent consultants, and the reason for that is most of our students are coming from private schools that have a college counseling
College.
department.
Right. Right.
So usually they've got that. And no, we also are definitely not planning on doing a college counseling part, because I think it's not our strength, and I'd rather leave it to the people who really really know what they're doing.
Got it, Sam. Sam, I think I've asked you all questions I wanted to about Franklin Yard, the way you started, and your operating techniques and stuff like that. I'd like to move on to the part where I want to understand what is your personal view on some of the practices, from a big picture. For example, the standardized test itself. What are your views on it generally, especially given that you come from a philosophy background and stuff like that? Do you think that's the right way to evaluate, or there are other ways to do it? Do you think it's kind of advantageous to some students and probably disadvantageous to some students, because they can probably have other methods to showcase their talents, or to prove their worth or whatever? So what is your
Yeah,
view in general about standardized tests?
yeah, it's tough. Um, I think they're flawed. So I think that we have to sort of take this. We have to look at sort of like the whole world of admissions, like all of the different pieces of admissions. I think that there are ways that this whole process could be moved forward considerably. I don't think there's a lot of issues with it. Um, I think that tests in general can be very useful for evaluating certain things. Um, that doesn't mean necessarily that the way that we currently do it is the best way to do it. So I think I'm sort of pro testing, but I also think that maybe we can do better than the SAT or ACT. I would always say, like, I think they can be improved, frankly. Um, but right now, I think if you just took testing out of the equation for admissions, there would be issues. We wouldn't be getting very clear pictures of students. Um, some students, yes, but a lot of students, no.
Right. I mean, you're saying, yeah, there could be better ways to do it, but currently this is the best that we have. And without this, it would not work as much. Now, when you said, it's flawed, or, when you said it's improved, are there specific things, are there things that come to your mind, like the top two things, like that's really pressing issues according to you, can be changed in the immediate future?
For the tests themselves.
Yeah, the whole process that includes the
Oh,
whole
oh,
admission
oh.
process that includes the standardized
Mm,
test.
well, gosh, that's a really good question. I think it's hard to say. I would like more. I think more. Again, this isn't really my. To be honest, I'm not an expert in admissions, but I would say more options for things that students can submit. So if they were, because right now we've got sort of GPA, extracurriculars, your essay, test scores. Um, I don't know exactly what this world would look like, but if there were more things that could showcase different aspects of students, I would be in support of that. Um, they wouldn't have to be required. I think you could make, if there were, for instance, 8 things that you could potentially submit, and you had to submit 6 of them, so you could, not submit your test scores and maybe not submit an essay, but submit 6 other things. Just like giving students a little bit of agency in showing the best side of them. Because I agree that like some people, for instance, aren't that good at testing. And so like, should that really hold them back? No, not necessarily. So I think test optionals I'm totally fine with, but I think you could probably continue this logic a little bit farther. Anyway, giving students a little bit more option. I think again, there's probably issues with that, and I don't know. It's probably a flawed idea. It's in a lot of ways, but that's the first thing that comes to mind.
No, great. I mean, this is exactly, where we wanted to kind of explore. And you know what? It's not about being an expert in admissions, because at the end of the day, you are at a grassroots level because you're working with the students who are taking the test. So if you may not be an expert in admissions, but you probably, when you talk to students on a daily basis, even if you're teaching, I think there are a lot of things that you can pick up that are not probably being said. And, you have that very it's just the instinct, just a feeling that you get by the way the students react to simple things. And how easy or difficult testing is, because some people, maybe testing is not suitable for them, and some people are not articulate enough to express their best versions through an essay. So I mean, everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, but it feels at some point that we are forcing everybody to pick up skills. It could be, one is the testing skills, and one is articulating, writing an essay, convincing the admissions team why you should be picked and stuff like that. So, but when you said there could be more avenues or options where students can probably leave out writing an essay and leave out the testing, and probably there could be other ways. So I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, right? Because you brought this out, I hadn't thought from this point of view. Would you think doing the same thing, the essay thing, but switching a video on and talking into the camera, do you think that could be an option? Is that what you meant when you said, okay, 6 other things? Can this
I
be one
mean,
of those
yeah,
6 things?
well, yeah. So think like we probably have some elements of this too. Like if you're a dancer, if you're like a ballet dancer, and
Right.
I've never helped a ballet dancer submit his or her application to college, but I assume you have like video or something. But if you sort of extended that flexibility to everyone, I think that could be interesting. Especially now as everyone's getting good at like recording themselves too. So
Yeah, that
it's,
seems
it's
to
like
be
a,
this.
show your creativity. But I guess the thing that always gives me pause with this is, we're trying to capture who the student really is. But once you sort of formalize that, you're like, well, hey, we'll get to see, what the student's all about. Well, then, your video consultants pop up. Now people with money hire their video consultants to help them make their video. So it's always hard to escape those issues of fairness and privilege, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
I mean, actually, these set of questions that we brought in, it's a very new concept that we started. We wanted to kind of, put together from a lot of interviews, okay, what we just come up with a pattern of, this is what the majority of people think. And it's occurring to me for the first time because I'm doing this for the first time. If we talk a lot more about this, we're going to reach a dead end where everything, it just tends to lead us into a nihilistic sort of a thinking. I mean, I'm just saying, not now. If you keep
Yeah,
talking, it just
yeah,
feels like, oh, you know what? There's no point doing anything,
yeah. No, it is. This is what's so. It's like you have to do something, right? Like we all know, like we have to sort of try to make this process, not we, but
Yeah,
not you and I, but
all
we
of
have to
us.
try to
Yeah,
make this process as effective and as fair as possible. But there's no, there's certainly no perfect version, and there's
right.
probably no version that doesn't have serious flaws. But
Yeah, yeah. I think, especially when you told about, when I said probably videoing oneself, and then you said, when if you bring in the video element, then a video consultant has to come, because then the number of elements that you'll have to focus on goes much beyond. When
yeah,
you take that video thing deeper, it seems like writing an essay is a very simplified approach. So it looks like at the end of the day, it comes down to a demand and supply problem. Look, you know what, we've got 100 seats, everybody wants to come here. There should be a way to filter out people, and if everybody is going to have same experiences, they're just going to find some other aspect to filter out. Your video quality was better than somebody else's video, so therefore, we're going to take you. So it kind of is a very tricky topic to keep talking about, but very interesting though. Which brings, I think, which is why it is important to have this kind of a competition, because this is what pushes everybody to raise their standards, and they are the ones who lead the way. And I don't think there is, as much as we talk about socialistic ways of, keeping everybody equal and stuff like that, this seems very innovative. It's just, as I'm talking to you, this is occurring. I'm moving on to the next question, Sam. How effective do you think these test scores are in predicting somebody's college success? You think, okay, somebody scores a perfect one, are they pretty much destined to do well in their college?
yeah. Well, I think the first thing I would say is that we have, I mean, in the US, we have so many colleges and they're so different. So that would be one issue immediately, I think, is that, sometimes when we talk about this, what we're really talking about is like the elite colleges. But of course, most colleges are not Ivy League. 99% of students don't go to the Ivy League. So I think that it's probably better at predicting success for certain types of schools and not all types of schools at all. So that would be one thing. But I do think that it's it's I think it's a more honest measure than people sometimes want to admit. And we're in a time in the US where, like, we talk about people talk about grade inflation. Like, everyone has A's and B's.
Right.
And so it's kind of hard to really get a measure on what their mastery of certain subjects is. And so that's where I think testing can play an important role. Again, I'm not saying I'm pro SAT per se or pro ACT, but I think just testing in principle can play an important role there. And I mean, also just to say, like, there are other countries that have testing at this stage and do it very differently. So there are other ways of doing it. I think of, Germany. Germany does this in an interesting and completely different way. And I'm sure there's lots of other countries that I'm not familiar with how they do it. But sometimes in the US, all the testing debate is really about the SAT. And I think we can have two debates, like, one, the value of testing, and two, is the SAT a good test for ACT?
Got it, Sam. And talking about testing, another problem is, SAT has gone digital now. And within the testing itself, there is some sort of a change. So how is this, from a student point of view, from your interactions with students, how has this been received? I mean, is it been a non-issue, or, have there been a lot of concerns in this area?
Well, with students, I think the thing to remember is that they are not, they're approaching this for the first time. So the vast majority of students have nothing to compare it to. So I know the past test and I know this test. Most students who are taking it now have never dealt
Right.
with the paper test. So I think the reception is probably what you would expect. There's certain things that they like. There's certain things that they don't like or they find challenging. I mean, if you score really high, people are happy. If they if they don't score high, people tend to be frustrated with the test. I think student perception is not actually all that different from what it used to be.
Got it, Sam. And there is the concept of practice test and practice testing before the actual test and stuff like that. And when it was pen and paper, it's one thing. Have you, as an organization, prepared for the digital way of helping students get familiarized with the digital SAT?
Yeah, so we have. So of course there's Blue Book, which is available to everyone, and so you can kind of experience firsthand what the testing experience is like. We also have a sort of practice platform that we use for now, which we might change. So we have ways, yeah, I mean, basically a lot of our materials, although not all, and I don't think it needs to be all, are sort of experienced through the new digital format. And I say not all because, of course, like understanding the format is important, but also if you just need to practice 10, linear equation problems, it doesn't always need to be in the digital format. So I think there's a bit of balance there.
Got it, Sam. Sam, talking about the practice test is one thing. There has been a lot of talk, so much so that there are test prep, companies whose name starts with, no anxiety test prep or, low anxiety, whatever, all that stress and the anxiety and the mental stuff. How's that when it comes to your students? Do you see that a lot? Students talking about it? Is that something that you address and talk about? And do you have, methods that you help students with?
Yeah, so it's stressful. It's definitely stressful. I think it's stressful for students. It's stressful for parents. So stress is 100% a component of what we are dealing with when we're talking about the SAT or the ACT. I think that, it's like if you're trying to, play tennis or something and you were really stressed out, like that's obviously working on anxiety is important, but also you need to also know how to play tennis, right? So it's not just a matter, but also playing better will make you less anxious too. So I think understanding the test and improving on the test and thinking about anxiety specifically, I think they work hand in hand to lower stress. Yeah.
You're saying the best way to beat stress and anxiety is be well prepared. Do you think it's directly proportional to that? If you're well prepared, it's gonna be lesser, but that the stress and anxiety comes up naturally when you're not well prepared.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm if I should cricket, let's make it cricket. If I show up to a professional cricket match, I've never played cricket in my life. I'm going to be stressed no matter how many anti-anxiety techniques I use because I have no idea what I'm doing, and they're much better than me. So, skills, practice, and sort of anti-anxiety approaches, I think, are both part of it.
First time I've heard somebody in the US talk about cricket.
Just trying to cross-cultural connection, yeah.
Based stuff. And you know what? In the month of June, India and Pakistan are playing a match of cricket in New York, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Oh, really? Is it like one of those multi-day ones? Is it always multi-day?
No. This is the shortest format. It's called T20 version. It's called 2020.
Uh,
It lasts for about 3.5, 4 hours.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah,
Got it.
and we already touched upon this, and you spoke about this a little bit. What about colleges went test optional, but a lot of them are reverting back to the test score system. What's your take on that? Why do you think that's happening, Sam?
Mm, okay. The why is tricky. I mean, it's certain types of schools that you're seeing this in predominantly. So you've got like on the one side you have the sort of Ivies and the near Ivies that are bringing back testing, or some of them are bringing back testing. And on the other hand, you have some big state schools that are also doing it. But I do think it's probably going to sort of stop and stabilize. And I think we're not looking at a future where all the schools are going to bring back testing. I think that's absolutely not going to happen. I think most schools will continue to be test optional, with some types of schools requiring testing. Um, as far as the why, I don't know. I don't know. I've heard a lot of interesting people talk about this who know a lot about it. Um, some of the ideas I've heard are sort of conspiratorial. So I don't want to. I don't know if I endorse them, um, but I know what they've cited. Like the Ivies, who have sort of said explicitly that it has disadvantaged underprivileged families in the admissions process to not to do have test optional. Um, and so that's why they're bringing it back in the name of fairness. I cannot, I don't know if that's true. I can't speak to the truth of that. Um, I know that's what they're saying publicly. So,
Wow, interesting. Because great. I mean, we spoke about standardized tests probably not being, a fair way to evaluate students' capabilities. But there could be another theory that people are thinking it is. You said it can be disadvantageous to people coming from less privileged backgrounds. Is that right? Uh,
well, it's a little bit confusing because what the claim is from these schools is that they weigh your background in considering your test scores.
right.
So let's say um, you applied to Harvard and you had a good test score, but it was below average for Harvard. But you went to a school where only 5% of the students went on to college. And so what they found, according to them, was that those students weren't submitting their scores because they thought, oh, it's below average for Harvard or whatever. So they're not submitting
Oh,
it,
right. Okay.
but
Okay.
like they would have seen, okay, look at this student's background. This score is actually incredible. And they would have basically given them credit for what's really an outstanding accomplishment, but they weren't submitting it. So they weren't able to consider it. So that was again, I'm just reporting what the schools claimed. Yeah.
Got it. And just another question. I mean, you don't have to like really answer this, but just what you think is what I'm really interested in, because the internet and chat GPT say that Harvard receives close to 50,000 applications a year, and they manually go through each one of them. Do you think they do that manually?
I think they do. I think they do. I mean,
And they
I
say they
know,
have a jury that takes a call on every admission. Do you think that's possible practically?
I think that it's, I think that it is. I mean, I know people who have been in admissions, and I know that they are very good at going through a high volume of applications. I think you get really good at it, right? It's like a skill to and I don't think that they're skimming, but of course there's certain human limitations to how deep you can go. But um so I think they really are manually going through it. I think that they must use certain shortcuts if to sort of help with the process, meant even just sort of mental shortcuts perhaps. But yeah, yeah. I mean, they have
You
but
know what? I'm not
how
really
many
looking for a factual answer. I'm just,
I
as a
just think
human,
like
what do you think? That's all.
I
But
think
yeah,
that these schools have so much money. I mean, it's like a billions and billions and billions of dollars. So they're certainly able to
right,
hire enough people to do it. And I think it's probably in their interest. So I guess my suspicion is that they actually do it,
right.
like
Oh,
how they say.
and if they're hiring or not, what I read was they have their alumni volunteers who kind of
Yeah, right.
contribute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they're not like fixed people. It could be anybody who is just volunteering. Okay, you know what? So great. I mean,
yeah.
I just wanted to know what, did you for a fact know something, or is it something that people wonder? But I got my answer. And I probably have my concluding question here, Sam. So, what future do you see for standardized testing in college admissions over the next decade or so, maybe 5, 10 years? Where do you see all this going? Like, how do you see this in general? And the impact it's going to have on an organization like yours that whose primary focus is helping people with testing. Do you think it's become the testing thing has become too big now to kind of go away? A lot of people are invested in it, and there is not really uh, no choice about it.
I think it could go away. I think it could go away. I don't think it's going to go away for the next 10 years, but I mean, there was a point after COVID where I really thought it might. I mean, it just needs to get enough momentum in terms of people wanting it to go away, then it will go away. I mean, if enough people decide that it's a bad thing, then they can do something about it. I I actually okay, so one thought about this is that there's a lot of different pressures facing these tests, and I think it's also helpful to just think about the test as the SAT and the ACT. I mean, they're just two companies, right? They're two companies.
Right.
So and they behave like companies. So they're facing pressures from different angles. One is the sort of political pressure, or sort of the public perception of the fairness or the effectiveness of the test. There's also the business pressure of competition. So they're two tests that are competing against one another. And I do kind of wonder, you see this a little bit with the SAT getting shorter,
Yeah.
and the reading passages are shorter, and then now it's like, okay, now the ball is in the ACT's court to make their test more user friendly, to recapture the market share that I'm sure they're probably going to lose. So I think there is a way in which the competition between the tests could lead to I'm just saying potentially to such bad tests that they sort of end up
You
killing
reduce, reduce,
themselves.
reduce, reduce, and then it
Yeah,
becomes
yeah,
a 10
exactly.
minute test.
It's sort of no, really, and it's like it's just a sort of race to the bottom, and then they get to a point where maybe one of them has won, but people don't really take the test seriously anymore. And I don't think that we're not that close to that, but business, they want to survive, right? And unfortunately,
Yeah.
like there's motives that these companies have that aren't just about education, obviously. So I think it's unknown. I think they could be here to stay for the next 30 years, and I think they might go away in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it, Sam. I think the
And then
the
we'll have to,
one
both you and I will have to find something else to do with our time at that point.
everybody has got their own problems with these things, how these
Yeah.
things turn out to be. And the one line that's probably that I'm gonna take away is race to the bottom. When two companies are competing to make tests easier or user friendly, yeah, you start to wonder where is it like really going. If that's what is the intention, another company could pop
Actually,
up and
you're also seeing this a little bit on we have the GRE and the GMAT, so these
Right.
two grad tests, which are increasingly competing. It used to be the GMAT was just, well, actually the LSAT too. I mean, really, they're all three of the GRE sort of competing with both in some schools.
Okay.
And you're seeing, for instance, the LSAT getting rid of logic games, and you're seeing the GMAT. The GMAT just got redesigned. So it's like it kind of mirrors society in a way, like where things things change much faster now. So like you had stretches of like decades where these tests didn't change, and then maybe there was a little bit of a change, and now it's like they're changing at a much more rapid pace, and like, well, where's that going to end up?
Right. And I think we can only expect to see more changes with technologies rapidly evolving. And
100%.
yeah, I mean, with AI coming in and stuff like that, I think it's going to become even more. Probably people are not going to even type and click. It's just going to be come and sit in front of the screen and probably, talk to the system and then walk. Or I don't know. I mean, it's pretty wide.
We'll just have Elon Musk's chip in our brain, and it'll just put all the answers for us. Yeah.
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 In some ways, it feels like everything is already ready and the companies are just releasing the updates a little slower to just, kind of make it feel like it's a gradual transformation. But yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for, giving it a thought to all the questions that really may not matter to the way you run your business and stuff like that. But we wanted to see, what people like you who run test prep businesses think about such things. And thank you so much for participating, Sam. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is fun.